Shoot, man. I swear you sent me the hex code. Where the heck did that go?
It's not in the chat?
No.
Are you serious?
Oh wait, yeah, it is.
Oh, I was
Never
going to say, it
mind.
is for me.
Oh man, I'm an idiot. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I'm sad about Ryan Sweeney.
Oh, yeah, you're going to talk about him, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I get to talk about James Russell, somebody I never thought I would talk about again.
Again.
You know what, though? Russell was not bad. He really wasn't.
No. Well, no. I don't know. There were some times I never really. Well, okay. I should say I felt more confidence in him than I have in any other lefty reliever in quite a long time for the Cubs.
Yeah.
I will
I
say that.
I listened to a Reds podcast, and it is hilarious. I like him. I met him at New Media Expo, but like they're excited about Kevin Gregg.
What?
Yeah, and they are excited about
Wait a second. Kevin Gregg is
Kevin Gregg is their closer,
away.
and Marlon Byrd is on their team, of course. So
Oh my goodness, man.
yeah.
Goggles finds new life.
I know. They were talking about like how big he is, and like I think that they looked at that one good season that he had with the Cubs, like that second season. So they were looking at his stats and he was like, "Hey, he was pretty good for the Cubs." And I was like, "Yeah,
Oh
right."
man, what was
I
that?
mean,
Like
he
three?
was for 1 year.
Was that 2 or 3 years ago? I think that was
I
three
think it
years
was
ago.
2 years ago. He was terrible the 1 year, and
I
then he
think
was actually pretty good the second year.
I think he had 2 good seasons though with the Cubs, didn't he?
Maybe, I don't remember. I
I
try to
don't know.
block out that period of Cubs baseball as much as possible.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm ready if you are.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
Are
if
we
you
gonna
need.
read all of the captions?
Oh, ugh, how many are there? I haven't even looked at them.
Um, 16, 17 it looks like maybe.
Let's just try. Let's try it and see if we can get through them quickly.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I suppose I should preview these beforehand just to make sure there's nothing I don't want to read.
Well, and we can edit out.
Oh yeah, good point.
I don't. I'm not seeing anything in there.
Yeah, it looks pretty straight ahead. Okay.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Welcome to the first midweek episode of the IVMV podcast. On this episode, we're going to share our thoughts on the first series of the season. The middle game of the series won't be played until later in the year. The Cardinals took opening night, and the Cubs won Wednesday's game, backed by a strong pitching performance by Jake Arrieta. We also talk about the opening day rosters for the Cubs minor league teams. It is April 8th, 2015. And you're listening. I'm going to do this all over again because something doesn't sound right on my end. How do I sound on your end? Do I sound okay?
Sound pretty normal.
It does?
Yeah.
It sounds tinny to me.
Oh well. Yeah. And now that you mention, I can hear a little tune.
Can you?
Yeah.
Is that a little bit better right there?
Talk a little bit more.
Now my headphones are like short now. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. That sounds better to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Shit, I gotta fix my headphones. One, two, three, four, 5. Whoops. Oh my gosh, my camera fell off. Okay. It's like we've never podcasted before. All right, I think. All right, I think I'm ready.
All right.
Sounds better to me. Does it sound okay to you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, here we go. Welcome to the first midweek episode of the IVMV podcast. On this episode, we're going to share our thoughts on the first series of the season. The middle game of the series won't be played until later in the year. The Cardinals took opening night, and the Cubs won Wednesday's game, backed by a strong pitching performance by Jake Arrieta. We also talk about the opening day rosters for the Cubs minor league teams. It is April 8th, 2015, and you're listening to the 306th episode of the IVMV podcast. Thanks for downloading this episode of the IVMV podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Corey, and I am joined by Andy. Andy, how's it going?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Corey.
Did that throw you for a loop?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, a little bit different intro, I guess, and it has to be.
Right. I was kind of thinking, like, with this being a different episode, I think these midweek episodes are going to have a different feel. I thought, we should just come in a little bit different.
Right, different flavor. Try out the midweek flavor, everybody.
Right. That's what I was thinking. So hopefully I'm sure I caught all of the listeners off guard, too, that are used to us coming into the show the exact same way, and all of a sudden I'm introducing you.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. People are already removing it from their podcatchers.
Right. I can't handle change. Forget these guys. So this episode is brought to you by all of our Patreon contributors. To help support this podcast and get some IVMV perks like stickers, posters, IVMV pint glasses, go to patreon.com/IVMV. That's patreon.com/IVMV. And also, we're extending our opening day sale on our t-shirts through Friday night. And so you can get 20% off our shirts by using the promo code 2015-2015. Go to ivmv.com/store. So Kurt will probably join in this midweek episode from time to time, but probably not. But so these midweek episodes will primarily be Andy and me. Kurt has not gone away. He'll still be doing the Sunday evening episodes. So another thing I want to get out of the way here, this next week will be a little bit different for our podcast. I leave for Las Vegas Saturday night, and I will be out there because our podcast is in a finalist in the sports category for the Podcast Awards. We're up against ESPN and Dan Patrick, so chances are I won't be worrying about how to fly a trophy home, but I will be at the ceremony to represent the podcast. So this weekend's episode of the podcast will probably come out a little early, and I will be in Vegas all next week. And so for as far as next week's midweek episode goes, I hope to have a pre-recorded interview done to post midweek. So hopefully we won't miss any episodes. But as each day goes by, the likelihood of a midweek episode decreases, because now I only have a couple days, and I've got two interviews that have, the people are interested, but whether or not we can get it to work into the schedules and everything, that's another story. So, baseball is here, Andy. Isn't it awesome?
Yes.
It's
finally.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I don't like having to wait 2 full days for the second game of the season. That
No,
is
that was
not
garbage.
ideal.
Yeah. I wasn't feeling that at all. I hated the fact that the game was postponed on Tuesday night because I already felt like I'd been very patient and
Right.
and
Yeah, no kidding.
and I deserved a game on Tuesday by God. And then it was postponed by an act of God, apparently,
Or
or an
something.
or an act of excrement. Um, but uh, but yeah, it was finally back today, and of course I had to work during the game, but I was able to kind of track it, as you would say. So yeah, I'm thrilled to have it back. It's awesome.
Yeah, I sat at work and had a game day up so I could see what was going on. But we are 1-1. The Cubs are 1-1. And tonight, Taylor Krebs, he pointed out that this is the first time since April 5th, 2013, that the Cubs have been at 500. And
What?
I did not fact check that. I trust Taylor, but that is a startling. That's your scary stat of the week right there.
Yeah.
That 2 years and 3 days since the Cubs have been 500.
Yipes. Let's hope they don't start another long streak like that. I mean, I don't think they'll go that long at all.
Right. Yeah. Um. I have to admit, although today's game was not a dominating win, I am pretty happy today. Michael from Galesburg also has to be happy. He took their daughter up there for her first Cubs game, and Michael's wife Delana is a lifelong Cardinals fan, and the baby is only a month old, and so the battle for the baby fandom is already underway. And I have to say, I have cheers to Delana for going along with it and going to the game. I think that was pretty cool. It probably helped that they were playing the Cardinals.
Oh yeah, that had to have helped. But
Yeah, and Michael caught a foul ball today.
oh really? Yeah.
Yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
yeah. So
Well,
I think the stars are aligning, and
right.
that baby needs to be a Cubs fan.
It's an auspicious start.
Right. So let's first talk about opening night. I mean, let's not get into the games too much, but we should mention, we went to Duffy's for our game watch, the IVMV opening night game watch, and we'll get into our thoughts on the first series here in a little bit. But Tony from Alexis was there, and Jason from Rock Island, Michael from Galesburg, and I don't know, maybe there's some stories you would like to tell about that evening at Duffy's. Well, I'll just ask you. You've been in Duffy's before, but there really hasn't been much of a crowd when you've been in Duffy's.
No, and that was the thing that hit me first when we got in there was just how thrilled I was to be in a big crowd of Cubs fans. Like, it had been a while since I had been in that setting, and so that was actually initially delightful. And then I looked around me and started noticing specific people, and that's where that feeling was tempered just a little bit. For example, there was a guy dressed in full Steve Bartman costume,
Yeah.
and then there was a lady also carrying a stuffed goat around. So I don't understand. I have no. It just blows my mind. It's mind-boggling why people continue to celebrate the curses.
Right. And I mean, I think that guy that was dressed like Bartman, I believe he was a Cubs fan. It didn't seem like he was a Cardinals fan there to kind of like rub it in or anything. And he did look a lot like Bartman.
Did,
Strangely.
yeah. Oh man, but I just don't understand that at all. I mean, why would you even mess with that stuff? I mean, whether you give any credence to the supernatural realm or I don't know. It's just bizarre to me. But yeah, it was a strange night. I couldn't really hear the audio, so I went back and watched the game later just so I could kind of get a better sense of
How bad the game was.
how bad it was and what hit the Cubs. But man, there were some weird things that happened. For example, I ended up pouring beer into a guy's beer can from a pitcher. Just stuff like that. so
I When we were there, and I mean, there was a ton of people there. Like Michael is a firefighter, and I said, we're past capacity, right? Like this is probably not safe. And although he assured me that there were other firefighters in the building, so we were good. That yes, it was probably not up to code. Um, but yeah, like there were so many people there, and there was legitimate excitement from even and I've watched a lot of games at Duffy's. I know that it is the guys that sit there and watch the games and then complain because they don't understand why certain players aren't up. They don't understand why the team is so bad the last couple of years. I would not say casual fans, but I would say maybe like common fans,
Sure.
like your everyday fans. And they were excited about this team. And I don't think it was just because it was opening day. Like, I think there was legitimate excitement about the team. And I'll say, like, being in there, it had a playoff feel to it.
It did, and you kind of start to get lost in that feel, and
I know.
Swept up in the excitement. And then, like, certain things would happen to kind of, like, certain things would happen to kind of break it, break you out of it, snap you out of it. For example, we're like shoulder to shoulder. It's fairly packed in there, and then these people kind of weasel their way in behind us to play the video game slots. Like, can you find a different venue for that, or can you take a break on take 5 on the slots on the video gaming?
Oh man, yeah, we could tell more stories.
There's a lot of stories, yeah, but
we witnessed. But one thing, I was talking to Tony quite a bit, and one thing that he talked about that really stood out to me and kind of has stuck with me, and that was that he was talking about just wanting to see an extended winning streak. That's what he misses most about these last number of seasons, is not seeing any extended winning streak and not feeling like there's any momentum or anything like that. And I thought, that's a good point. I've actually I can't even tell you when was the last time the Cubs, like you said, when was the last time the Cubs won 10 games in a row?
Right, or even looked at the paper and looked at, how it has this, in the paper it would have the streak column in the standings, and you saw the Cubs and it said 8-2 or something like that. It just
I feel like we had some good stretches there at the end of the year last year.
Yeah.
But nothing like that. And I thought, you know what, that's true. Like I cannot wait for that feeling. I mean, there's a lot of things that just in the last 3 days I have felt that it's like, oh my gosh, like going to Duffy's that night and there being so many people and so many people excited and having that like playoff environment. And it's like, oh yeah, okay. I remember 08. I remember that feeling for all of, about as long as the feeling lasted for that game on Sunday. But I don't know, there's just so much that I really look forward to, and I think that it's not going to be until we experience those things again where it's like, oh yeah, I forgot what this felt like. Because like I said, I've been to Duffy's. This is my 3rd opening day there in a row, and this is the first time that I felt that playoff vibe. That the people, people were there paying attention to every single pitch. People were absolutely paying attention to the game, paying attention to every single pitch, and it's like, the other opening days that I've been there, it's been more like a party, and
sure,
and it just felt different this year. One thing I want to ask you about: did you understand what was going on where we were all drinking to the greatest Cubs fan that ever lived? Do you know what that was about?
No, I have no idea.
But we drank to that person, whoever it was.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if it must have been like a regular there.
Yeah, it had to have been, I'm sure.
Yeah. But anyways, it was a lot of fun. And baseball is here, so let's get into things. First off, Andy, I know you are crushed by a move that the Cubs made within the last few days, and that is the DFA and the release of Ryan Sweeney.
Finally, that Ryan Sweeney got some release. Yeah, I'm only sad about this just for my infantile, stupid sense of humor, I guess. But Ryan Sweeney, yeah, he was DFA'd and then subsequently released, and he just had a pretty terrible season last year. He had an anemic OBP. He didn't hit for power, bad slugging percentage. 2013 was pretty good for him, and that was what earned him the 2-year deal that the Cubs ended up giving him. And he did seem like a good asset to have, a guy that um, they could plug in there really at any time, and he would give them a quality game. I felt like he was thrown out of any rhythm he had when he had that. He had some long-term injury. I think it was from crashing into a wall. Do you remember that, Corey?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so yeah, they ended up releasing him. I'm sure he'll end up, getting a minor league deal with some other team somewhere. But obviously they could have traded them within that window between when they DFA'd him and when they released him, but I guess there wasn't any interest as far as he goes. But so he was on a 2-year deal. Then this would have been the second year of that deal, and so the Cubs are going to have to eat that money that they owed him for this season, which was $1.5 million. And then there was a small option for 2016 as well. So
Right.
they're going to eat a little bit of money on it, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. I was glad to see.
You're saying
Yeah.
Ryan Sweeney is not a big deal?
Well, I mean, it's a big deal, but I was glad to see that Matt Caesar made the team, at least for now. Probably just until Denorfia is ready to go, but I think that he deserved to get that spot. So. But yeah, I remember when we were on a road trip at some point, we started to write a song
I forgot about that.
about Ryan Sweeney. We thought we would maybe even try to record it at some point. I don't know. So we were kind of brainstorming lyrics, and I think the song was going to be called "Get Ryan Sweeney Up." But but some of the
I forgot about that.
I don't want to go into the lines from the song because it's pretty crass, but.
Right.
But anyway, we kind of got a kick out of that. I'm sure we'll find some other puerile thing to laugh about in the near future.
Andy, I don't know if you're paying any attention to the chat right now. We are doing a live broadcast, by the way, and in the chat right now, there's a gentleman in there by the name of Kurt. That dude is sitting there watching us. What do you think about that?
Well, that's kind of interesting. I guess maybe he could have been on the episode. I don't know.
That's kind of what I was getting at, but
Yeah.
hey, more power to him.
Yeah.
Taking a night off, I don't blame him. No, he said he's working, so
Oh, okay.
I'm sure
I
he's
know
working.
he said he had to stay home, I think, with a sick kid today, so he probably has to play a little catch up.
Right. Yep. Another move that the Cubs made, the Cubs added to their bullpen today by signing James Russell, who had been released by the Braves, and this is a minor league deal. Obviously, Cubs fans were familiar with James Russell. He was traded from the Cubs to the Braves last year with Emilio Bonifacio for Victor Caratini, catcher that is with
He's going to be with Myrtle
Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's starting the season with them. And cash. There was also cash involved there. Worth mentioning.
Oh, yeah. Cold, hard cash.
Yep. So I would assume that Russell will head to Iowa, and then he will be an option if the Cubs need a lefty in the bullpen. Right now, Phil Koch is the only lefty in the bullpen, and so I guess he would be, competing with Roskup, I guess, if the Cubs did need to bring someone up. So.
But yeah, that's nice to see because I mean, who knows what I would hate to think about anybody getting injured, but Phil Koch is a little bit older guy, right? If I'm not mistaken, he is 32 years old. So it's just good to have some other options, in case they do need another lefty in the bullpen at some point. So it's cheap and it's just smart to get a guy of his caliber. I know he was having a rough spring, but we know how solid he can be, though.
Right. So let's just kind of share our thoughts, I guess, the things that stood out to us here in the first in the first series. So I have no clue what you're going to talk about. So I've got a few things written down. So have at it. Whatever. I mean,
Well,
what stood out to you the most? I guess.
I guess if you had the Google Doc open, you'd be able to see what my thoughts are. But at any rate, one thing that kind of drove me crazy in the first game, of course, it was awesome getting to see Lester pitch finally in a Cubs uniform. But Kurt Schilling was one of the commentators for the game, and he kept talking about how Lester looked uncomfortable throwing to bases and didn't want to throw to bases.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
been
sorry, go ahead.
that's become like suddenly like the national storyline with Lester.
Yeah, and that I don't know, that drives me crazy. But he did have several opportunities where he could have thrown over, but I just think the notion where he's scared to throw to a base is ridiculous. I just think that needs to be squelched because I think that's crazy. They showed some video of him in his move over to first, and it's not strong, that's for sure. And you would think for a lefty it would look fairly natural, but it doesn't. But at any rate, the notion that he would be just kind of like be timid or scared to throw to a base, I found to be pretty crazy.
Right, and the fact now that like everybody has keyed in on that. I mean, you know, you're now all of a sudden you're hearing it everywhere. You know, on sports talk radio and on podcasts and everything. It's everywhere. So now I think like anytime someone steals a base on Lester, that's going to be what's brought up. You know, oh well, it's because he never checks over to first. But I don't know. Forget throwing over to first. I still think Lester doesn't look quite right. At times he looked sharp in that game.
Mm-hmm.
The strike zone on Sunday was pretty inconsistent, so I guess it's kind of hard to, you know, I guess you have to take that into consideration too. But he was pulled after 4 1/3 innings with 89 pitches. I really think that was a good idea to pull him then.
Oh yeah.
He
had a little bit less work than the other starters because of his dead arm.
Right. I mean, we saw him that outing where he was bad
right.
at spring training, and I mean when we were watching him in the bullpen, it was clear he didn't feel right then. And I'm not, you know, I haven't watched enough of Lester to know kind of his body language and stuff like that. He still just didn't look right to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's good, you know, let him throw 90 pitches and then get him out of there. And he's not pitching again, I believe, until Monday, so he's getting 8 days off. There's just no sense I don't think there's any sense in having Lester out there battling in cold April weather when the offense was struggling so much. You know, the offense wasn't doing anything. The Cubs were not going to score, and you know, they were down 3-0.
And he was already looking a little uncomfortable. It was time to bring in a fresh arm. And really think about it, this is kind of an extension of his spring training. He's still going to be sharpening up here, you know, over the next week, I'm guessing, and kind of getting his groove. So like checking the ball over to first to check on somebody is kind of I think he even mentioned that in the press conference that it's kind of not his focus right now, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be. That being said, I do hope he plans on trying to check over at some point if necessary in the next game, because if he has this reputation for not checking over and then all of a sudden does, I have a feeling we could see a runner caught in a rundown, you know, or something like that at some point.
Yeah, he should save it and do it to Billy Hamilton.
Yeah.
That would be fun to watch. But another reason, you know, I like the idea of pulling him early was let the bullpen get some work, you know, especially with these days off, the scheduled days off, and then the potential for rainouts in April. I just liked that, you know, they got, four relievers in, I think, Koch, Strop, Rondon, and Mott, I believe, all got in. So, and all of those except for Mott got some work in today. So I think it's a good idea. Bullpen's fresh, you know, and ready to go, and save some pressure. There's no sense in having Lester out there down 3-0 throwing 110 pitches.
Right. But then on the flip side today, Arrieta had kind of a deeper run into the game, and so it gave Madden an opportunity to be a little bit more selective and make decisions based on matchups with the bullpen. And you kind of saw today, you got a glimpse of how this thing could work under Madden's guidance, and it I think when he's able to use it in that way, I mean the Cubs are going to be hard to beat with pitching like they had today.
Yeah, the bullpen is awesome right
They
now.
look sharp. I love Neil Ramirez. I've said that before. I think he's awesome. It's great to see Phil Koch come in and just really pound the strike zone and look strong. Rondon got his first save today. I mean, it's hard not to feel optimistic about the bullpen.
Yeah, I think the bullpen is. I mean, in previous years we thought the bullpen was pretty good, but this time the bullpen seems like. I mean, even heading into this before these two performances, you look at that bullpen, it's like, man, that's a good bullpen, and but you know how bullpens go. I mean, it's just who knows. Things can go downhill quickly, and
Sure.
especially if somebody is struggling, it's hard to get back on track.
Yeah,
But the bullpen right now has 6 2/3 scoreless innings pitched. So
that's awesome. I did notice that Jason Mate tucked the chain after every pitch guy. I kind of hate that. That always bothered me with Bobby Howery. Just get the chain that falls out after every pitch and then tuck it back. I don't know.
I think we talked about this before, but I don't understand why baseball players wear necklaces. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't either. But anyway, it's great to see that they look strong.
We should start wearing necklaces, and then when we do something at work, and it pops out, and tuck it back in.
Yeah. Erase the chalkboard and it flies out. Oh, sorry, I gotta tuck this back in. I listened to Effectively Wild today, and they talked about one other thing I wanted to mention. They talked about the K zone in the ESPN broadcast that was
right
there the whole time, and I feel like it did. Like I got kind of angry when Rizzo struck out on some kind of questionable pitches, and he was using his good plate discipline, and it just was kind of backfiring on him because of the fluctuating strike zone. And I think it was extra noticeable due to that stupid K-zone thing that was on the screen. I think I maybe would have been a little bit less likely to I don't know, just consistently notice how much it fluctuated.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that's a good idea. I don't like it there because while those pitches to Rizzo were not in the strike zone, they weren't real far off. I mean, I think if you looked at it subjectively, objectively.
I am looking at it subjectively.
I don't think they were like just crazy calls. They weren't good, but it wasn't crazy, and I don't like that it's there. I don't like that that's all I'm looking at, and especially because they have, and they mentioned this on Effectively Wild, they have like the contrast is different for the zone than the rest of the screen, and so your eyes are just like kind of like glued in there, which they are anyways. I mean that's where you're watching, but I just don't like it, and I think we're kind of setting ourselves up for like a lot of like kind of maybe unnecessary criticism of umpires.
Yeah.
And with instant replay and the way things are going, I do like instant replay because I think it's a good idea to get calls right and stuff like that. But on the other hand, I do kind of appreciate the human element of the game.
Right.
And
me too.
This feels a little bit too like I don't know. I don't like it that much. I want to be able to like look at a pitch and decide for myself whether or not I think that was a strike. And then, if they feel the need to do an instant replay and show where the strike zone is, that's one thing. But I don't like it there on every pitch. I don't like that.
It's kind of like drawing vanishing lines on a painting to like show how it's structured or something. Like I'm not saying baseball is a work of art, but it is. It's kind of a poetic game, and when they do stuff like that, it kind of takes the poetry out of it a little bit. Man, wasn't it nice to see that first RBI today?
Yes. That was. I mean, it was today's game was a really good game. I mean, those were like two great pitching performances. Yeah. And with it being cold and damp, you knew it wasn't going to. Their Cubs were going to have to generate runs, and that's exactly what they did. And they all it took was Rizzo getting hit by a pitch, and it's like, okay, well, here we go, we're in business. Because I mean, we couldn't get anybody on base. We had Soler hit a triple, and we couldn't do anything with it. And so it was just nice. You kind of felt like with that part of the order coming up and Rizzo getting on base, you kind of felt like, okay, the Cubs might be able to put something together here,
be their
at least scratch out a run.
Right.
Then they ended up getting two, but. Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to Arrieta, man, he looks so good today, so good. And
Yeah.
I mean, I was watching on the game day or whatever, but then I did watch some of his pitches and stuff like that, and I mean, he looks so good. So he went 7 innings, gave up 3 hits, 7 walks or 7 strikeouts and 3 walks. I mean, the first inning he was a little sketchy. The first inning. I think he threw 22 pitches and seemed like he was having some trouble locating. But man, when he locked in, and then it was really good. If you like pitching, it was a good game.
I do. I love watching him pitch, and you're right. Like I saw some of the pitches, people had posted vines and gifs of it on Twitter, and man, some of those pitches were really sick.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the condensed game tonight. I suppose we should mention this. We probably should talk about Bathroom Gate and the rainout.
Sure, yeah, I guess we should mention it.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast knows what the bathroom situation was. Danny Rocket wrote a song about it. I posted to our Facebook page. If you haven't heard that yet, check it out. It's pretty good. I wish I had like a tenth of the talent that Danny has.
Yeah, he's good. I'm surprised he didn't get to the Ryan Sweeney song before us, but
right.
But maybe that's a little bit. Maybe
I'm sure
that's
he's listening. That's his challenge.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of a fiasco. I can still I can kind of buy. I mean, obviously they needed to get some more infrastructure in there, restroom style. But I could still buy. I mean, even though it didn't rain necessarily in Chicago on Tuesday, I mean, it really was really cold. Still, I think it was just about as cold as today, wasn't it?
I don't know. I mean, today I think it was like 46.
Oh, so maybe a little bit colder, but anyway, they didn't play the game. A lot of people are speculating that it was due to the bathroom situation, not due to the weather.
And
I don't know if I buy that.
Here's the thing. I don't buy it, but on the other hand, okay, here I'm going to vent for a second. Things are just not going well for the Cubs to start this season as far as public relations goes, and it's primarily, I would say, 100% the off the field stuff. And here's what I think: there is no reason that everything should be so sloppy and mishandled on the business side of things. It's a mess every step of the way. Nothing, back to the rooftops and the construction. I mean, some of what has happened is permissible or legitimate or whatever, but it's like they just, yeah. It's the fact that like sometimes it feels like their head is in the sand, and they won't admit anything is going wrong around them, and so that's when things like the bathrooms get thrown on fans at the last second, and nobody knows about it, and they haven't planned ahead to have porta potties or some other alternate, and it's like, what did you expect to happen? Somebody is in charge of this stuff, and if Theo and Jed, if the baseball side of things were in charge of the business operations, I find it hard to believe that there would be only 2 working restrooms for 35,000 people. I mean, yeah. I don't think that Theo and Jed would be scrambling to bring in 72 porta potties, and if I was Ricketts, I would not be happy about this stuff. And if I was the baseball side, I would be annoyed by this stuff. It's just dumb. It's unnecessary. It looks bad, and it taints everything that they're trying to do. You know, they're trying to like build up this hype and build up this interest in what they're doing, and it's like, why would I want to go to Wrigley? The bleachers aren't done. They don't have bathrooms. People are, you know, peeing in beer cups and leaving them on the concourse or whatever. I mean, it's just it's stupid. And
Yeah, and
somebody
it's hard
had,
to be the butt of, you know, it's hard for your team to be the butt of national jokes
right,
like it
and
has
like
been.
it just seems like you can avoid this stuff by being like forthright about it or planning ahead. Not, it's almost like they just assume like, oh, everything's going to work out. It's good, and it's like, no, it's not working out, and every step of the way is an absolute disaster. And so
Yeah.
get it figured out, and like seriously, it feels like someone should answer for this stuff because someone has done a really crummy job.
And it's kind of crazy how like their attempt at kind of diffusing tension with the home of future restrooms and then parentheses relieved
Right.
probably like actually backfired and had the effect of infuriating people.
Right. If you were missing, if you paid a lot of money to go to opening night and then you miss, you know, I don't know if this is an exaggeration, but I read that people were waiting like 3 innings to go to the bathroom. That is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, if and maybe, and I don't know all the details. Like, let's say they had a plumbing issue arise that night. That's one thing, you know. But like, if you knew earlier in the day that was the situation, then you get the freaking porta potties in there. You know, like you don't just assume everything's going to turn out okay. You have a lot of people drinking beer and it's cold. They're going to have to pee.
Yeah. All in all, it's quite a fiasco, and you know, hopefully it gets better from here. You know, so hopefully all this serves as sort of the, you know, the lighting the fire under their collective butts to make sure they foresee unforeseen circumstances. They take care of business. You know, so it's at least a semi-comfortable experience for people to go to the games.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It just feels like somebody should answer for this. And I mean, I'm just putting myself. I mean, Andy, you know how I run things with IVMV. You know, I run it with a. You know, I'm a stickler when it comes to details and stuff.
You pan over to the other side of your studio and it's all piss jars.
Right. I mean, if I was Ricketts, heads would roll.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious though. I mean, you know, I joke, but it's like, man, this is a like multi-billion-dollar entity here, and it's being run very sloppy in certain aspects, and in certain aspects, it's very clean and it's very calculated and it's run very well, and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just strange, and hopefully, like I said, it's sort of the wake up call that they need to really focus on getting things on track.
Yeah, Kurt, host of this podcast, co-host of this podcast, is in the chat and says that Julian Green, who is in the PR department for the Cubs, he was on today and said they messed up. So, yeah, I feel bad for some of those guys like him that have to face the media and have to face fans, you know, to basically cover for someone else's mistakes.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's you know that's his job description.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I have a lot of I feel for those guys in the PR department that are having to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on from that excrement.
Well, let's stay on excrement. How about the inability to hit with runners in scoring position?
Oh man. Yeah.
At least today, kind of, you know, took that sour taste out of our mouths. But it's Sunday, the Cubs were 0 for 13 with runners in scoring position, and they got runners on base and just couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, and the bats got off to a cold start today as well, and it's, like I said, that's why it was so nice to. I was trying to help you transition into this discussion earlier. It's so nice to see that first RBI today when Castro finally drove in the run. But this is kind of, you know, to be expected with the crazy cold conditions, the cold weather. And so it was nice to see, for example, like Coughlin lay down a bunt today
Right.
to push over Castro to third base. Madden gave props to him in the post game conference, and he reiterated how it's important, and it's the message that he's been preaching, that it's not about it's not about me, and so he said that Coughlin really demonstrated that today when he bunted Castro over. And with that being said, Coughlin also in Sunday's game hit a ball that probably would have been a homer in warmer weather. And
Right.
so I don't know. I mean, sometimes they probably can't avoid it. Like it just looks like a fat fastball hung out over the plate, or a hanging breaking ball, and they just feel like it's so crushable they can't resist. But I don't know. I hate to see them swing for the fences when in this type of weather.
When you know it's just going to end up 5 feet short on the warning track.
Yeah, and there were several deep drives in both of these games that probably would have been home runs in June or July.
Yeah.
So I'm not really concerned about the bats. I mean, I think they're gonna come along, and I think it's good to get this first, get over this first speed bump of climbing the first little mountain of trying to win your first game, and
Right.
that's out of the way, and so they can really just.
Well, and I'm looking ahead, and I'm like, oh man, okay, so we got Colorado this weekend. We're a better team than them, and then I think after that we've got the Reds. So I'm already thinking like, okay, we got a winning streak going on here. Let's go. Let's get this thing rolling.
As a side note, it's nice that they're going to be out of town for a few days here in a row, just so they can work on getting the stadium more in order too.
Yeah, and I think I saw the weather forecast for Denver, and I think it's supposed to be like mid-70s this weekend. So maybe we'll see those bats come alive a little bit more.
That'd be great.
And especially in Colorado where the ball flies. Any other thoughts about this opening series before we move on?
No, I mean, I was just disappointed they didn't get to play 3, but it's just so great to have baseball back. It's hard to complain. And I'm looking forward to Friday's game, which is a day game, and going to be working during the game again. But I just can't wait to see more baseball.
Yeah, Saturday night they play, so
yeah,
that'll be nice. I thought Friday night I thought the game was Friday night, but it's Friday during the day, huh? That sucks.
Yeah, it's a day game. The reason is because it's the Rockies' home opener. It actually starts at 3:10. It starts at 3:10, so I mean it is possible probably to catch the end of it after work, I suppose. Oh, you know what? That might warrant a stop on the way home from work. Now that I think about it, but
I think I know where you're going.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so the minor league teams in the Cubs organization, they start their seasons tomorrow night. The rosters have been announced, and I've been talking about these rosters on the new podcast that we have at ivmv.com, the Daily Northside Recap. You can find that podcast at dailynorthsiderecap.com, and it's also available in iTunes and Stitcher. It is a daily Monday through Friday podcast, and it recaps the previous day's games in the Cubs organization. Unfortunately, I haven't had all of the teams playing yet, but I've been kind of going through these rosters. So let's, for anybody that hasn't subscribed to that podcast, hasn't listened, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, as much time probably as I did in the other podcast, but let's go through these rosters real quick, or at least some of the key players on the rosters. So, Andy, why don't you take Iowa?
Yeah, we'll do. Sadly, at Iowa, there's really no interesting players. So it's kind of just a boring team, really,
right.
Overall.
I don't know why anybody would want to go watch that team play.
Yeah, I mean, they have players like Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Addison Russell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just kind of a black hole as far as talent is concerned. No, I mean, this is the team to go watch if you're anywhere in the vicinity of Des Moines. It's time to get in the car, pack up the family, and head to the ballpark and watch these guys who probably, Bryant's not going to be there long. Who knows about Baez? Might have a little bit longer time to catch Russell play, but
although, did you see that Addison Russell is not starting the season for Iowa? that he's not joining the team until their first home games, which that is next weekend.
Oh, interesting. I didn't see that.
Yeah, he's staying in Arizona until they open in Des Moines.
Oh, interesting. That's kind of strange. Did they give any reasoning for that?
I didn't see anything.
Okay. But anyway, yeah. So there's those guys. So I mean, that's obviously what everybody's going to be focusing on with Iowa. I read a funny tidbit from their press release about their roster, and it said right-hander Blake Parker will appear in an Iowa uniform for the 8th consecutive year.
What?
I know. And he enters the 2015 as the club's all-time saves leader with 66.
Really?
So
8 years?
I know. That blows my mind.
I had no idea.
But there are some strong pitchers down there that the Cubs will dip into over the course of the season. Don Roach, who already has big league experience. Eric Jokic, we're familiar with him. Zach Roskup, who I'm sure we could see at some point in the bullpen. Armando Rivero, who is a Cuban pitcher the Cubs signed and has some promise. As well as our old favorite baseball Jesus, Brian Schlitter, is down there as well.
And now James Russell.
So, I mean, there's...
Our second Jesus.
It's effectively, as far as pitching is concerned, an extended bench for the big league club, and I'm sure, some of these guys we're going to see. I guess one other player worth mentioning that we're very familiar with is Junior Lake, so it'll be just interesting to see how he performs down there as well. But really, the main focus is our core of prospects there, Bryant, Baez, Russell, right. And really be interesting to see if Baez can get on track here and just really pound the ball.
Feast on AAA pitching.
Yeah.
The top position player prospects for Tennessee this year. Tennessee, of course, the Tennessee Smokies, the Cubs AA affiliate. The top position player prospects are Kyle Schwarber and Albert Almora. It will be an interesting season for Schwarber because the question is whether or not he can stick behind the plate. There's not much of a question about his bat. In 3 levels in 2014, he hit .344 with 18 home runs in 72 games. I think the Cubs really want him to stick at catcher and move up, to kind of overlap with Montero a bit. I don't remember where I read this, probably Cubs Den or Bleacher Nation, but it seems like I read that the Cubs will probably be making a decision on Schwarber this season. And if he's not going to stick at catcher, they're better off moving him up a little quicker to get his bat into the Cubs lineup. But things may move a little more slowly if he is sticking at catcher. And then Albert Almora, he was with Tennessee for 36 games last season. Was not a great stint for Almora there in AA last year. He had .234, .250, .355. But he looked really good in spring training at a .345 batting average, and he struck out just twice in 29 at-bats. There's really no questions about there's no questioning his defense, and it was more of his offense at AA last year that was troubling. So hopefully he can continue his spring performance. He looked really good when we saw him out there in Arizona.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Dan Vogelbach also joins the Smokies to start this season, and it'll be interesting to see how Vogelbach does against AA pitching. And I kind of feel like if he does well, this is where Vogelbach might start picking up some value as a trade piece. I think it was kind of hard to see him as a real valuable trade piece. I mean, he has a huge, he's got a big bat. He can hit a ball a mile, but he was doing it against low A and high A pitching, and I don't think many teams are going to offer too much for someone at that level. And so I think it's going to be, if he can hit AA pitching the way he's hit, in the lower levels, this is where I think we might hear him talked about more often in trade talks.
Yeah, I mean, the guy is still a top 20 prospect, in the organization. But yeah, it just seems like he's kind of been lost in the shuffle, even though he has performed reasonably well.
Yeah.
So anything else about Tennessee?
Well, as far as pitchers go, C.J. Edwards will return to the Smokies after pitching some for them last year. He was injured part of the year, but he did come back pretty strong after the injury. He had a 2.44 ERA. He's considered the fifth best prospect in the Cubs system, and I think that if he does well in the first month or two, we'll probably see him moved up to Iowa pretty quickly. One thing that came out today is that he will at least be starting the season as a reliever. So I think there's a couple reasons behind that. I think that actually kind of escalates his timeline into when we could see him with the Cubs. I think that he's a very slight man. I guess that's how I would say. I think he weighs like 150 or 155. And I think there's some concerns. The Cubs say they don't have concerns about wear and tear on his arm and durability and stuff like that. But I think that if because he's starting off as a reliever, I don't think that necessarily means, okay, he's a reliever now, and that's what he's going to be. I think it could also be the fact that they're saving his arm early in the season, let him, pitch out of the bullpen, and then maybe in Iowa or maybe even for the Cubs later in the season, then he'll have a little bit more mileage left on his arm for the season. Because, I mean, pitching is not easy on somebody's arm, and when you have somebody that's as thin as he is and everything, I would think that everything's kind of under a little bit more stress. So it's interesting that he's starting off in the bullpen, and I don't think he'll. I mean, I think he either won't be in Tennessee for very long, and we'll see him move up to Iowa, or maybe they use him as a reliever with Tennessee, and then when they move him to Iowa, they stretch him out and he starts up there. Or I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's possible. I still think it's possible that we see him by the end of the year this year, and I don't know if they would do a Double-A to major league level jump. I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him.
Yeah, for sure. I was certainly surprised to hear that news today, but then at the same time, maybe not so much given his injury last year and then also his frame, as you mentioned. But just a guy that has such a potential to be so valuable as a starter, it's kind of a little bit of a buzzkill.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't think that necessarily means they've given up on him as a starter. I think they might just say, okay, here, there's no reason for you to go out and throw 90 pitches. Here, Go out and throw 25 and do some side sessions and whatever. And then, Andy, tell us about the Myrtle Beach roster.
Yeah, sure. As a side note, I think it's hailing here right now, so we'll see. Like if I go black all of a sudden, you guys know why. I got clocked in the head by a giant hailstone that flew through the window. But anyway, Myrtle Beach is advertising in their press release that they have 9 players on the roster that, according to both MLBpipeline.com and Baseball America, are among the Cubs' top 30 prospects. So they have, quite a pile of prospects to sort through there as well. Those guys that rank in the top 30 include Jen-Ho Tseng, and you saw him. I didn't see him pitch, but you did in spring training, and you liked what you saw, right, Corey?
Yeah, I think that was the game. I think I saw him pitch against that Canadian.
Yeah, the Canadian squad
had 18 and 19-year-old kids on it. He looked really good. I mean, he looked. I was surprised at how much pop his fastball had.
Right, big athletic guy.
Yeah, it was. Are you being sarcastic?
No, seriously. Didn't he kind of have a surprisingly big frame?
Yeah, his upper body is bigger than you would expect. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, he's down there. You have Paul Blackburn, of course, who ranks pretty highly on all the Cubs lists. You have two prospects that are very disciplined hitters in Billy McKinney and Mark Zagunis. And interestingly enough, Mark Zagunis, a third-round pick for the Cubs, in 2014. He is a catcher/outfielder, but it looks like they're planning on keeping him mostly in the outfield in Myrtle Beach because they have 3 other catchers on the roster. So it looks like they're kind of looking to get his bat involved at higher levels sooner, perhaps, than trying to work on his development as a catcher. Although I did see him catch quite a bit in spring training, So I don't think that they're necessarily abandoning that completely, but I'll be interested to see what happens with that situation. Um, and also Jacob Hanneman, Dwayne Underwood, which he's kind of flown under the radar for me, but the guy has a really strong fastball. We're talking mid 90s, and maybe a little bit weaker secondary stuff. But if you look at prospect rankings, this MLB pipeline, so I don't know how much credence you want to give to this thing. I feel dirty giving it a lot of respect, but he's ranked ahead of Pierce Johnson on their list as a pitcher, which I found to be interesting. And only C.J. Edwards is ranked higher than Dwayne Underwood on their list. Baseball America does have Pierce Johnson one spot above Dwayne Underwood at 9 and Dwayne Underwood at 10. But anyway, he's an exciting pitcher. I can't wait to hear more about what he does and track him a little bit. But
I got to see him pitch once last year for King County.
Okay.
But unfortunately, it was like 32 degrees, and I couldn't concentrate enough to watch him because I was so cold. And so I remember him not looking real sharp, but I completely understood why, because I could not figure out how anybody would be able to grip a baseball, and it was like misting.
And how they even still played the game, really.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, rounding out the 9 players that are in the top 30 would be Dari Torres, Jamer Candelario, which we've seen him quite a bit in single A in person. Victor Caratini, which we mentioned earlier, came over in a trade.
The Russell trade.
The Russell trade, yeah. So that's it for Myrtle Beach. And so what do you have for South Bend?
Yeah, so they are the low A affiliate in the Midwest League. If you are waking up from your off-season slumber, the Cubs moved their Midwest League affiliation from Kane County to South Bend. There are some interesting names on this roster. Jake Stinnett was drafted in the second round of the 2014 draft. After signing, he pitched in 5 games between the Rookie League and short-season Boise. Other notable names on the South Bend roster, Gleyber Torres. He's just 18 years old. He was signed as a 16-year-old as an international free agent. He played 50 games in Rookie League and with Boise last year. I forgot to mention he's a shortstop. He hit 297 last year. I'm not sure he'll stick it short. He's not quite as athletic as some of the other shortstops in the system, but he is an exciting player to pay attention to. And one thing, I was kind of surprised that Eloy Jimenez wasn't on the South Bend roster. He's also 18, was signed as a free agent in that same international signing period as Torres. We saw both of these guys in spring training, and in the 5 minutes of action and the one at bat by each of them, Jimenez is bigger and kind of has more of a Jorge Soler look, where Torres' build kind of reminded me of Addison Russell. But we're not scouts, and all we really knew was that we were looking at 2 kids that were born when we were in college and looked more athletic than we will ever be. And we ever were. So those are the most notable players on the South Bend Cubs roster, and I'm going over the entire team on Thursday's episode of the Daily Northside Recap, and so you can listen to that for the entire roster and the recap of today's Cubs game. So let's do the photo caption contest. It has been months since we have done the photo caption contest. We kind of pushed it out of the podcast because we were just running out of time and the episodes were going so long. And we kind of, it was pushed out because we had this, shiny, sparkly new baby called the Internet Muscle Flex segment that we fell in love with. So the plan right now is to include the photo caption contest in these midweek episodes. So, Andy, would you describe the picture?
Sure, yeah. What we have is actually, at first I was thinking it was a group of players, but it looks like it's a group of coaches, and maybe David Ross.
I think it's John Lester.
John Lester gathered around John Madden.
It's hard to say because it's
John Madden. Oh my God, Joe Madden.
His back is to us, and so it's hard to tell whether it's David Ross or Lester, but I think it's Lester.
Yeah. So anyway, mostly looks like a group of coaches gathered around Joe Madden, and he is like doing an awkward, looks like an awkward throwing motion, kind of. And he has sort of an amused look on his face. So here's what we got for captions. Our new buddy Jason from New Mexico. I mean, he's been around for a long time as a listener, and but we got to meet him on the spring training trip. His is the first caption. He says, "Madden, was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? It's not over till we say it's over." All right. As a motivational speaker. Eric says, "Gangnam Style." Kind of looks like Psy, maybe. Mike says, "Madden, well, John, the rest of these guys tried to explain how to execute a pickoff move. Might as well take a shot myself." And his stance does kind of look like a Lester pickoff move to first. Josh writes, "We are the knights who say, me."
That's a movie reference we get.
That's one we got. Thank you, Josh. James says, "Stay behind the line and throw the dart at the bullseye." He's training them in darts. Derek writes, "Joe Madden demonstrates his patented overhand technique for Wii bowling." And that's pretty awesome. I actually just broke out Wii Sports last night, so that one is especially good for me. Sean writes, "And you do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around." Guys, come on, guys, turn yourself around, damn it. Already people are not listening to him. Another commenter lamented the fact that Sean beat him to the hokey pokey reference. Terry writes, "Now get the runner across, or next week you'll be living in a van down by the river." And then it says Chris Farley SNL reference, and then it says bringing back the references reference. Nick writes, "This is what my Zumba instructor says is my best move." Jeff wrote, "I say whip it good." And talking about Devo there. I was noticing I watched an episode of Last Man on Earth last night, and Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo was responsible for the music.
Huh.
So that was cool. Tim writes, "So there's me and Brian Williams on a chopper listening to some Chuck eating bacon cheeseburgers." Listening to some Chuck eating bacon cheeseburgers when we started taking RPGs. That's fantastic, Tim. And I don't know if he deliberately chose eating bacon cheeseburgers specifically, but that's great.
Yeah, I think there were some inside jokes in there.
Yeah. Jason writes, "Joe Madden doing his best impression of Indiana Jones." I think he could do a little bit better. Corey writes, "Here's how I threw hand grenades at the rats that left Wrigley during the renovation." Matthew says, "And this is what Lester would look like if he threw righty." That's what I would look like if I threw righty. Matthew also has a second entry, and it says, "And then I threw my lasso and wrestled that croc." I don't know if that's a Crocodile Dundee or a Crocodile Hunter reference, if either. But Daniel says, "See, guys, I had to stand like this to piss in a beer cup during opening night." All right, I wondered how long it would take for somebody to get to that. And then Jim rounds out the captions by saying, "This is not a dead arm."
Okay, let's pick a winner.
And this is going to be harder to do with two of us.
I know.
So we're going to have to come to a consensus. But I'll give you my top two. The first one is Derek's Joe Madden demonstrates his patented overhand technique for Wii bowling. Or I like Tim's, so there's me and Brian Williams on a chopper listening to some Chuck eating bacon cheeseburgers when we started taking RPGs.
I think I'm going to have to go with Tim's.
All right.
I like both of them. And there's a few other ones I like, but I do. Any mention of Chuck Mangione and bacon cheeseburger gets me.
Yeah. So.
But it gets me this week. It won't get me next week. So
yeah. So don't pander. Don't even try to pander.
Right. Right.
He's a professional when it comes to this kind of thing.
Right.
So congratulations, Tim, and
Yeah.
thanks everybody for bringing it back strongly with us.
Yep. So I'll post these things probably on Monday mornings. These photos for the caption contest, and then we will do them on the midweek episode. So thanks
And
for downloading.
before you close, Corey, Tim happens to be in the chat, the winner of the caption contest, and he says it's about time. And what? I don't know if he's ever won the caption contest before, so.
Oh, I don't know. I assumed he.
I kind of assumed he did, but
Yeah, I'm sure he has.
okay.
He's been to Duffy's before.
Yeah,
he was there for the Javi Baez. We were talking about we saw the Duffy's patron that was flirting with his wife.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He was there for
he says he says it's win number 2.
Oh,
so
well, getting the 2015 season off to a good start, Tim. So thanks for downloading this episode of the IVMV podcast. As I mentioned earlier, the next episode of our podcast will come out a little earlier because I'm heading to Las Vegas. You can follow us on Twitter at IVMV, and we are at IVMV podcast on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook, ivmv.com/Facebook, and I will spread the word, probably not on Instagram, but through Twitter and Facebook when we decide that we are recording, and if we do it live, then I will let you know so you can watch it if you would like, and you can do that by going to ivmv.com/live. If you want to order an IVMV shirt, order by Friday night to get 20% off. You can go to ivmv.com/store and use the coupon code 2015-2015. If you enjoy our podcast, please consider telling a friend that is a Cubs fan. If you're active in message boards or Facebook groups, whatever, just share this podcast with others. We'd really appreciate it. And this episode of our podcast was brought to you by all of our Patreon supporters. Pledging levels start as low as just $1 a month. It goes a long way to help us doing things like producing 2 IVMV episodes a week and 5 episodes a week of the Daily Northside Recap. If you have not yet subscribed to that podcast, check it out. I say subscribed, and my mom pointed out, she was here on Easter and said, you say subscribed, and maybe people think that it costs money. And I never really thought about that. So when I say subscribed, it does not mean that it costs. It's a free subscription, just like this podcast is in all the directories. So you can find it at dailynorthsiderecap.com. It's in iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. So thank you for listening, and until this weekend, go Cubs. All right. We still didn't get it under an hour.
yeah, I mean, without the captions, it would have been closer, but
we still would have been
an hour 20, isn't it?
No, it was only like an hour 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't hear any edits in there. Did you?
No, I don't think so. I think it was pretty seamless throughout.
All right. I'm going to go because I have to do the Daily Northside Recap now. So.
All right. Well, take care. I'll talk to you again soon.
Yep. See you, Kurt.
Thanks, everybody, for listening and checking in live.
Thanks for watching, Kurt. If I was Kurt, I'd be watching too. So.
We should emphasize that anytime he's available to do it, he should do it.
Right. I talked with him, and actually we got cut off. His phone gets really crummy service, but I was telling him, that I'm not really going to ever ask him if he wants in, but whenever he wants in, just tell me. You know what I mean? I don't want him to feel obligated, so I'm not even going to bother asking him.
Right.
But if he wants to do it, yeah, absolutely. So, all right. I will talk to you later.
All right. We'll see you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.